All right, hello everybody. It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes. Cheers. I am very, very excited tonight. I am chatting with the one and only Mike Lare, the Larewolf of multiple killer bands, Cadavarice, Perdition Sect, Ringworm, the C.O.A.S.T, et cetera, like a lot of cool stuff. Super talented guy, guitar player, bass player, vocalist, lyricist. Mike, it's so good to chat with you. How you doing, man?
Hi, Victor. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I don't play drums. That's one thing I just can't do. Never got the hang.
Well, it's never too late. Never too late to learn, right?
Almost damn 50 years old. It's getting too late.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. What are you drinking tonight? Looks like you got a nice big brew.
Taking down a little can of Narwhal here. I don't know. Okay, that's backwards, but this is one of Sierra Nevada's brews. It's called Narwhal. It is an imperial stout. I found it years ago, and it's one of my favorites. I love Narwhal. I like most imperial stouts, but this one is heavy duty. This is rich. It's not overly bitter. It's definitely not sweet, but you can see it is like drinking a glass of black. It is awesome. One of my favorites. Delicious.
Yeah, mine as well. I love Narwhal. I think it's fantastic. It's as you said, I think it's one of, if not the best, one of the best imperial stouts I've ever had. Like I compare it to any imperial stout I have. I always compare it to the Narwhal.
Do the same. It wasn't the first imperial stout I ever had, but it was it left its mark. I really enjoy it. And it's super hard to find anymore. This 4-pack of Narwhal that I just picked up is the first Narwhal I've seen in years around the Central Ohio. I used to get it every winter, and used to have New Year's Eve parties, and we always drank Narwhal. Me and a few select friends, we always rang in the new year with a Narwhal. It's not for everyone. This beer is, I think, damn near 12%. It's tough, and I've got 2 of them in this giant mug here.
Nice.
By the end of this interview, it may get a little loose.
Very good. I love it. Yeah, there you go. That's great.
What are you drinking?
I'm going kind of mellow, at least right now. So I'm drinking a Fisher, and it's a galactic juice, in a crowler. It's only 5%, but it's tasty. It's kind of fruity and hazy. It's a pale ale, but it's like a hazy pale ale. And I'll probably grab something bigger after I finish this. But it's a local brewery here in Utah. Okay.
Yes, I was wondering, being in Utah, I've been through Utah. I played some shows there, of course, and I guess I just thought always that Utah beer was like 3.2 and no higher than that. I didn't know you could get good beer in Utah. So tell me what I need to do next time I'm in Salt Lake or something like that.
Okay, so next time you're in Salt Lake, so the important thing, in my opinion, is to go to the breweries. Like definitely, like grocery stores, you're going to get 5% or less. That's it. That's all they're allowed to sell. But if you go to the breweries, all the local breweries, so they can do big beers, they can do high point beers, imperial stouts, they can do all of that stuff. And they have bottle shops. They can't serve it on tap, big beers. Everything on tap has to be 5% or less, but you can buy the bottle stuff. And a lot of times, depending on the brewery, we have fucking weird laws here. But some can, like, you can get a bottle of higher stuff and pour it in a glass. They just can't have it on a tap. So it kind of depends on where you go. But yeah, next time you're coming through, just connect with me. I'll take you out. We'll go to some cool places.
That's the plan then.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be.
Yeah. And speaking of that, are there any? Do you have any touring plans right now with like Ringworm or Perdition Sect?
Well, Perdition Sect doesn't really tour. We just do regional stuff on the weekends. It's not really a band that's built to tour, but we've got that's my bird flip. We have a big festival coming up in June. I took some notes here so I wouldn't forget these things. June 11th, we're playing in Cincinnati, and there's this big metal fest being put on called Obliteration.
Oh, cool.
OH Obliteration, because they're all the bands playing the fest are from Ohio.
Oh, nice.
and OH is our state abbreviation there. And it's a 2-day thing at 2 different venues, and we're playing on day 2 of the fest with a bunch of killer bands.
Nice.
Yeah, so we've got that, and in like 9 days, Perdition Sect is opening up for Immolation here in Columbus, where where half of Perdition Sect lives. Kyle and I both live in Columbus, and Kyle being Kyle from Incantation. He's drummer for Perdition Sect. We both live in Columbus, and Immolation is playing here on a Monday night. Not the next Monday, but I don't know when this will air, but May 9th is the Immolation Columbus, and we're on that bill with our good friends from Indianapolis, Demeric.
Cool. That'd be a killer show. Wow.
Just 3 bands on the bill, which is the perfect thing for a Monday night. You don't need any more than 3 bands. And Demericus has a new album coming out. And they've got those bands, those dudes are great. I love Demericus. Immolation's got the brand new album out that everybody, I don't know anybody's had a bad word to say about it.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Playing on an album that's a year and a half old. So that's fine, and it's fine. You know, I don't know if you know the Perdition Sect story, but we basically just put that album together during the pandemic when it first started.
Right. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that.
Well, it's a funny story. I love telling the story. The 2 guitar players for Perdition Sect, that would be Matt Sorg from Ringworm and Aaron Dallison from Keel Hall, and gosh, he's in so many other bands. Brain Tentacles, Actoma. He plays guitar in Perdition Sect along with Matt Sorg, and they were at a show up in Cleveland, and it was right before everything shut down. I think it was the Obsessed. I wasn't there, so I don't know for sure, but I think the Obsessed were playing up there, and they were like, "Hey, man," because they both work at the House of Blues up there. They're like, "Hey, you know, when shit starts shutting down, we're gonna be out of work. What do you want to do? Do you want to make a pandemic band and see what happens?" And they were like, "Yeah, let's do that." And they both were like, "Maybe we do something kind of in the vein of Discharge, you know, keep it simple and short songs and just real direct." And they were like, "Yeah, who do we get to make the rhythm section?" Phone calls were made to Columbus, where they called Kyle and they called me, and they were like, "Hey, you guys want to do this?" And I think both of us were just like, "Yep."
Yeah, nice.
So Matt, being the riff master that he is, starts churning out songs like just lightning fast. Aaron had a bunch too that he came up with. I had no idea how fast these boys were going to be working. Within like a week and a half, if even that long, it might not have been that long. Within a few days, there's emails and text messages and stuff being sent to everyone like, "Hey, we got 9 songs down." I'm like, "Shit, I haven't written one yet." So I put one together, and I had one that made the record. I wrote a bunch of the lyrics. Aaron wrote a bunch of the lyrics. Together, we collaborated on that. Nice. Divided up the vocal duties, all that. We all learned the riffs on our own. Kyle learned the songs and put the drums down. So then the drums were, then we had all these like phone recordings with Kyle's drums behind them so that we could learn the structure of the songs. And we essentially recorded these tracks having never practiced together as a band.
Weird.
Not we just everything came together via text messages and emails. And then when Kyle tracked his drums, then the scratch guitar tracks were there, and then the guitar tracks were laid down. Then the bass tracks get laid down. The vocals, I think, were the vocals were the last things to go down. And then we did all that again, having never practiced together as a band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the album was made in a manner that I had never made a record before, and it was really fun. It was a really fun way to do something that I've been doing for years in a completely different manner.
Yeah.
And I think we all kind of enjoyed that.
It was such an interesting time. There were so many bands that kind of ended up in that same position where, usually they would at least jam together and kind of write together, but it's like, okay, well, we can't, we're all locked down. So, suddenly you have all these musicians, emailing back and forth and texting and, sending. And it was really interesting because, it became the norm. And it's funny because I remember this was at least 20 years ago, probably closer to 30. I remember it's kind of this really artsy album, but it's Terry Bozzio and Billy Sheehan did an album together, and they, lived in two different states, and they would, it was before the internet really. So they were mailing CDs or tapes back and forth to each other. And, at the time I thought that's so bizarre, but that became the norm, for 2 years, with every band, basically. It's interesting.
Yeah. We fortunately had the luxury of the email and the text messages. Yeah. But we still had 150 miles between separating the four members, two in Columbus and two in Cleveland. And we did all the tracking in Kyle's basement. And then I think some of the guitar tracks were done in Cleveland at the end. But yeah, and then it was mixed and mastered at Mercenary Studios by Noah from Nunslaughter. Oh, cool. Who he's just absolutely killing it up there. He's a magician in the studio.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah, he's working on the new Ringworm album right now. Maybe not right.
That's exciting. I was going to ask you if there's because it's been, I guess the last Ringworm was 2019, right? The Death Becomes My Voice. Yeah. That was 2019, I think, right?
That's correct. That was right before I rejoined the band.
Okay. Oh yeah, because you left for a little while.
I left after the Scars album. Well, there was a live album that came out after Scars, but I left the band in 2012, and I'd been in like 7 years playing bass, and I played bass on Scars and the album before that, the Venomous Grand Design, and then the live album that A389 put out. I think was recorded in Baltimore. I don't remember. This is a killer live album though. So it was weird. In 2019, I was in Cleveland, attending a Sheer Terror show, and it was Matt's birthday. Matt Sorg, it's his birthday, so it was May 19, and we were just getting rip roaring drunk at the venue, and, as you do on your birthday.
Yeah.
It was a good show, good times, good friends, and Matt, we were outside in between bands, and he was like, "So, you want to come back to the band?" I'm like, "How am I going to do that? Ed's like the best bass player you've ever had. He was way better than me, and he is. He's Ed Stevens is an awesome bass player.
Yeah, great bass player.
Yeah, and he's I was like, "Oh, what's going on there?" And Matt was like, "No. We might have an opening up in the guitar department." I'm like, "Oh, you want me to play guitar in this band, huh?" He's like, "Well, I mean, if you're down, and I didn't take it too seriously at the time because, like I said, we were drinking pretty heavily. It was birthday time. Everybody's just just. So the next day, I asked Matt, I'm like, "Hey, remember when you asked me if I was interested in rejoining the band?" He's like, "Yeah, of course I do." I'm like, "Okay, well, I just wanted to be sure because I thought that was a little crazy." Because there had been other conversations that we had years past when the lineup changes were a little weird, and we didn't know who was going to do what. And I just told Matt, I'm like, "Hey, I can switch to rhythm guitar if you want to find a bass player. If it's easier to find a bass player." And he's like, "No, you're staying on bass. You're not playing guitar in this band." And I'm like, "Okay, fine." And that's where it always kind of stayed. And that 7 years go by, a lot changes, and so that's the long version of the story. The version, it just, I had to make sure that I could do it with my work and my personal life and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Let's do this. So I came back to the band after a 7-year absence, and it was just like when I joined the first time, because when I first joined the band, they had just put out the album Justice Replaced by Revenge, and they had a lineup change. And when I first joined the band, I wasn't even really joining. I was just filling in. I was filling. And then within like maybe a week and a half, they're like, "Hey, do you want to join the band?" I'm like, "Yep, that's why I'm here."
Nice.
So so I had to learn a whole bunch of songs off the record, and I knew some of the songs. I had to forget what I knew on bass and reapply all that to rhythm guitar. And,
Right.
Yeah. And so it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I like being
exciting.
a guitar player in this band, not the guitar player. Matt is the guitar player. I am a guitar player.
Nice. And so new album, you guys are working on new material.
Yeah, the album's recorded.
Great.
Well, the music's recorded. The vocals are a work in progress currently. I know we have a couple songs done at this point. I don't know exactly how many. I heard one of them today, a rough mix. It was absolutely awesome. I was blown away by it. For just a rough mix, I was like, this thing sounds amazing. The vocals will come together, and then there'll be lots of other ends to tidy up and all that. And there will be a new Ringworm record at some point soon. It's happening.
Excellent. That's great. That's great news. Is there a working title? I don't know if you can share that or not.
I cannot share that.
That's cool. That's cool.
It could change at any moment, and I'm not going on the record with anything.
Right.
Narwhal is awesome.
There you go. Well, that's really exciting news. Ringworm is such a great band. Just at any time you just want something just that fucking thrashes, like it just any Ringworm album I throw on, it's immediate joy, just like from that first note, it just joy. I love it.
That's a reaction I did not expect to hear, but I appreciate that.
It's
not the first thing I think of when I hear Ringworm songs.
Well, I guess my definition of joy.
I think this new record, you're going to love the new record. If you like of the other records, you're going to love this new one. It's perfect. And every band says that, I know, but I mean it this time. This new album, this batch of songs is just, man, they rip.
Nice. Well, that's the thing I find interesting that's kind of happening right now, and I don't know if it's because of the pandemic, but it seems like there's so much great material coming out of bands that have been around for a while and putting out some of their best stuff ever. Like, just like everybody seems really recharged. Like Immolation, you mentioned Immolation, Incantation.
I haven't heard anybody say a bad word about that new Immolation album.
Yeah,
and
it's feels. Yeah, Creator's got a new album coming out. I'm sure that'll be badass. I haven't heard anything yet, but it's just cool. There's a lot of stuff coming out. It's wreaking havoc on my wallet, but but that's okay. That's a good problem to have, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I wanted to ask you, I wanted to go back in time, quite a ways back in time, and ask you about kind of how you got started in music. Did you come from a musical family? Like, how did you get into guitar and bass, and kind of how did that all start for you?
Wow, great questions. Music's always something that's been around, and it's funny because my dad loves music, and he does not like any of the music that I make, but we do have common ground in like old classic rock. That's what he listened to constantly when I was a little kid. He was always playing it in the car when we were driving places. I used to live in Michigan, and everything up in northern lower Michigan is really spread apart. So if you got to go anywhere, you're driving a good distance. So anywhere. And, we didn't even measure distances in miles. We measured it in hours, how far is it? Grand? Oh, it's 2 hours. Okay. That's how it is. That's how I grew up. And, lots of dad rock, soft rock, stuff like that. That's kind of what my Seals and Crofts.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's what my dad was into. My dad does not rock, but my dad is awesome. and he is responsible for my appreciation of music. Not exactly the music I listen to. Like, my dad didn't even like Black Sabbath, and he was a teenager in the 70s. You'd think he'd be all about it. And
right.
No, he was not. But Bob Seger, that's more his speed. And I like that kind of stuff too. I like Steely Dan.
I love Steely Dan.
Steely Dan's so good. And my mom played the piano all the time. My dad bought her an electric organ. I guess at the time it was probably a more economical choice than a big old piano in the house. And my mom tried to teach me how to play the piano, but it didn't take. I only wanted to rock. Pianos didn't rock. You know, that's how I saw it anyway. I wanted to rock. I knew from the first time I ever saw a picture of Kiss that I wanted to rock, and that's all there was to it. Nothing was changing my mind. I've told people before that have asked, Kiss was my first favorite anything.
Nice.
My first favorite anything that I remember. I had Kiss toys, and you know, I'm not like the Kiss maniac with nothing but Kiss paraphernalia, you know, in my closets. But I grew up loving Kiss.
Yeah.
Still love Kiss to this day. But so music it's just been one of those things that I haven't been able to get away from. I never really wanted to. It's always been something that I leaned on heavily. Also, I used to live in Cadillac, Michigan, and any Kiss fan knows that there is a huge connection to Cadillac, Michigan with Kiss when they played the high school in 1975. Now, I was only 2 years old in 1975, but my aunts were old enough to know what that was all about, and they kind of imbued upon me the importance of Kiss. And that's, you know, my mom's sisters were largely responsible for introducing me to hard rock and heavy metal. Nice. You know, I had one aunt that gave me a stack of records, including like Ted Nugent and Aerosmith and Kiss and stuff like that. And it's like, and I have my own record player, and I listen to music every single day when I would get home from school. You know, some kids would just come home and play with their toys. I came home and listened to records, and I knew I wanted to rock forever, but I didn't get a guitar until I was maybe 12 or 13, and it was the worst guitar in the world. It was a real piece of shit that came from some flea market or whatever that my dad bought. He didn't know, you know, he just knew I wanted a guitar, so he got me a guitar and a little amp. And they were garbage, but I thought they were the greatest things ever. I could turn them up, make loud noises. I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't let the lack of talent stop me. Never have.
It's interesting. It's funny just the connections and the parallels with musicians of our age group. You know, you and I are similar in age, pretty close in age, and a lot of musicians that I talk to, especially guitar players that I talk to in our age group and a little bit older, you know, like in their 60s, like, you know, Mantis, somebody like that. The importance of Kiss, and also the importance, I think, of everybody I talk to, it seems like they all say like, yeah, my parents bought me this piece of shit guitar and that's how I learned. Yep. And I think in some ways that is, I mean, I'm not a musician myself, but I kind of wonder if that was an important part of that growth, was learning on a crappy guitar, because you really had to practice really hard and kind of figure out sound, because, you know, you've got this junky guitar and you're trying to figure out tone and trying to learn all that. And I wonder if that's part, you know, you're trying to sound like Ace and it's like, this guitar is not working. But, you know, it's interesting, just those parallels. I didn't mean to interrupt it. Just when you said that, I'm like, oh my God, like there's so many musicians I've talked to, especially recently, that are in our age group that all Kiss. It's all, you know, it was Kiss, you know, and same with me. I love Kiss. Same thing. I grew up listening to Kiss, loved Kiss, still love Kiss. Yeah. I mean, I've got a Ace Frehley smoking guitar poster on the wall over here. So yeah, that's funny. That's cool. I love that. So anyway, sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, that's it. I mean, there's not much, really a whole lot more to that. I had the same crappy guitar for a long time, and it was actually not something I stuck with. When I moved to Ohio, I kind of abandoned that particular guitar, not guitar in general, but that one. And I didn't get another one until I was maybe 15 or 16. And my next guitar was a bass guitar. Oh. And I thought, wow, okay, now I can really be like Gene Simmons. Because I didn't know the difference when I was a kid. You know, I just knew that these guys had guitars. I didn't know what the difference between a rhythm guitar and a bass guitar was. I had no clue. And then I got a bass guitar. and I started to figure things out, started to learn how to actually do what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to be Gene Simmons, you know? And bass guitar was where I really started learning my chops. So start learning how to play and how to get good tone and just, started fixing a lot of mistakes. Like when I just recently told the story to Matt when we were just bullshitting. Like I used to start all my strokes with an upstroke. Like it was like, because I taught myself, I didn't really know what was right and what was wrong. I just knew what I wanted to do. So instead of starting everything like like James Hetfield does with these downstrokes, the good solid right hand technique, I was the opposite. It was terrible. It was all upstrokes, and it was awful. And I had to kind of unlearn all that stuff when I started taking it more seriously.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, no offense, that seems unnatural. Like I think my instinct would be to go down.
I think that's probably why most people play like that, but
right.
A little backwards, I guess. And yeah, I used to start everything with an upstroke, and it just made everything more difficult. It wasn't better. I don't recommend anybody ever do it.
That's funny. I was curious at that time, and maybe even today, like as far as maybe this is a loaded question, but as far as being a bass player and a guitar player, but maybe particularly with bass. So you mentioned Gene Simmons. Who are kind of some of the other big influences for you, especially as a youngster with learning the bass?
Easy. Blackie from Voivod, Dan Loker from Pure Assault and SOD, and Lemmy. I mean, that's pretty much it. If I could, like in Weird Science, they build the perfect woman. and if I'm going to build the perfect bass player, it's going to be a combination of Gene Simmons, Lemmy, Blackie, and who else did I say? Dan Loker.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's it. You don't need a whole lot more than that. Yeah, sure. There's guys who are more skilled, I guess, but we're talking tone and style. What more do you need? Maybe a little bit of Geezer Butler thrown in there too.
Oh yeah, there you go. Nice.
I think when I was a kid either. So that's one reason why all those particular bass players appealed to me, is because they all played with a pick, except for Geezer, of course. But I always kind of gravitated to the guys that played with the pick because that's how I wanted to play. Now I can play either with or without the pick, but I'm still far more comfortable playing with the pick than I am playing with my fingers.
Interesting. As far as guitar players, rhythm guitar players, who are kind of some of the influences for you?
Mostly just the guys I play with.
Nice.
Yeah. I've never really thought about, and this is kind of funny. One of my favorite guitar players is a guy here in Ohio who has been playing. He's about my age, and he's played in a bunch of different bands also. His name is Chris Beam. Chris Beam is one of my favorite guitar players, and he's just awesome. And he kind of told me, like, because I asked him, how did you ever just get so good at playing leads? He's like, I don't know, man. I just play guitar. I don't really think of it as like rhythm or lead. I just play guitar. If you're playing leads, if you're playing rhythm, it's all guitar. So, and that made me look at it a little bit differently. Chris Beam is one of the most gifted guitar players I know of. And I was lucky enough to have filled in. He's playing this hardcore band called Time Has Come, their band. And Tony Brown from Face Value was also in that band. But they're like toward the end of Time Has Come, Tony had a lot of other things going on. He couldn't do all the gigs. So I would just come in and fill in on second guitar. And for me, it was like, it was a really awesome opportunity because I loved Time Has Come. To me, if you ask me, Time Has Come is the best hardcore band that Ohio's ever produced. Now, I know it's not a popular opinion, but it's my opinion, and I stick with it. I love Time Has Come. One of the best bands I've ever heard, period, from Ohio. Love it.
It's interesting, too, the amount of talent in Ohio. I mean, it's maybe living outside of the state, it's not, you don't immediately think of like, oh, Ohio is a hotbed for metal and hardcore, but it is. It's like there are a lot of cool bands that have come out of Ohio or continue to come out of Ohio, and it's interesting because a lot of you guys know each other and play with each other. There's
we all do.
Yeah.
We all, yeah. That's the funny thing about Ohio. It's like, yeah, everybody knows each other, and it's a real brotherhood. It really is. It's unlike anything else I could think of.
Yeah, it seems like it kind of reminds me, I know it's not the exact same thing, but it sort of reminds me kind of what's happening now in Ohio, especially with, like I said, like death metal and thrash metal and kind of hardcore stuff. It's almost like the thrash metal scene of the early 80s in California. That kind of feels like that kind of camaraderie but also, kind of challenging each other and also, just everybody knew each other and they all played together and in the clubs. And it seems like that's kind of what's happening in Ohio, which is interesting and really cool.
It's kind of been that way for a long time. The biggest difference that I can think of is that the fans are a lot more fickle here in Ohio. They come and they go, and they don't, they like to be seen in the scene. That's kind of I don't think they embrace the scene as wholeheartedly as maybe like the Bay Area kids did back then. Right. They took real ownership of that shit, and in Ohio it's more like, we'll just see what comes along next and entertain us. It's it comes and goes, man. Everything. Yeah. That's just my perspective on it. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot of trends come and go, and fans just kind of hop on with whatever's hot now, and then whatever's hot in a few years or whatever. It's just it kind of sucks. I wish that the fanhood was a little stronger.
Yeah.
And that they were just supporting the good bands. I'm not saying don't support all the bands, but support the bands and that are doing good and helping things grow, and then your whole scene only gets better. That's just wishful thinking. I'm a fan too, so that's kind of why I wish more people were like that.
Well, and like I said, there's just so much good stuff that's come out of that area over the last 20 years and continues to like Ringworm and Shed the Skin and I mean there's just so many great bands there and there's some really good metal bands here in Utah, but it's kind of similar. You go to a show and there's 20 people there. It's like, what the hell? Like, this band is killing it and there's nobody here. Right. But metal's a weird scene in America, I think, in general. Especially underground metal, or if you want to call it that. It seems, whereas I don't know, we're a fickle bunch of people, as you mentioned. I think it's nationally, from what I can tell, I can never figure it out. It's I'll go to a show and it'll be this small turnout, and then you go to another show and it's packed, and it's like, how the hell do these people even know about this band? So I don't know. It's weird. I can't figure it out, but
for over 30 years, I still don't have it.
Yeah, I'll just drink my beer and buy my albums and
Yep.
All right, so we've covered some good ground here. We've talked about your past growing up, and talked about kind of the new material you guys are working on with Perdition Sect and Ringworm. I know you've been in a lot of other bands. Do you have any other projects going on right now? Anything else? I mean, you've got 2 very active bands and 2 new albums, in the works, it sounds like. So, and some touring happening.
No, I don't have anything else on the fires right now. There's always talk, there's always room for ideas, and but quite honestly, the days of me being in like 5 different bands, those days are over for me. I don't have that desire to play in so many bands all the time, and frankly, I find it to be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, that's got to be exhausting.
It can be, yeah, and I did that kind of stuff for a long time. I think at one point I maxed out with, like, I was in 6 bands at one point at the same. And that's a bit much. You know, I was rehearsing 4 or 5 nights a week. And it's fun. It's a whole lot of fun, but man, it does leave a lot of room for anything else.
Yeah.
But no, I don't really have any solid 100% for sure irons in the fire right now.
Okay.
And there's always talk though. I mean, I just got a message from a friend of mine a few days ago. It was like, hey, I'm thinking about starting up a classic rock cover band. What do you think? I was like, that sounds like fun. I've done it before. You know, might be cool. And that's just, it's just there. It may never ever happen. He may hit me up tomorrow and be like, hey, here's the set list. Learn it.
Right. Oh, that's cool. I mean, you know, might end up just being, you know, a basement jam sort of thing, you know, which would be fun too, I'm sure.
I don't really want to do anymore. I used to be into that, and now if I'm just going to jam like that, I'll just jam by myself at home, or I'll learn other songs. I find that to be kind of fun now at this point. So I like to learn other songs that, you know, I don't already know. I've had to learn so many songs over the years. I've gotten kind of good at it, at learning other stuff. I don't really write a whole lot on my own these days. I wish I did, but I don't really. If I ever do, I already know exactly who I'm going to work with, and one of those guys is my good friend Mike Corns. He and I have been talking for years about getting a band off the ground, and we even have a name for it, and we know exactly what kind of music we're going to play and all that. But it's just one of those things, you know. We'll get to it when we get to it.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool though. I mean, it's always good to have a, you know, something kind of on the back burner, and you know, something.
There's always something. I'm not ever. I don't think I'm going to get to the point where I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to do. There's always something going on.
Well, and with, you know, with your kind of talent, I'm sure. I mean, there's, you know, not only, you know, and your desire to play. I'm sure there would be a lot of bands that would love to have you in their band. So
I'm a lot longer on desire and personality than I am on talent. That's for sure.
No, that's not true. That's great though. That's funny. One thing I'm always curious about, and maybe this is a stupid question, but I'm, you know, especially with, you know, people that have been around for a while, playing for a long time. I'm curious, like, do you listen to kind of the new metal bands, new stuff that's coming out? Is there anything that's grabbed you recently, like with young bands that are playing now, whether in Ohio or just nationally? No.
And I hate to be the get off my lawn guy. When I was younger, I was all about, you know, just discovering new bands and new songs and new albums and new directions. Like, it was a really big goal of mine, like in my 30s, to figure out what's new with music. Where's it going? Where's it headed? You know where it always heads for me? Back to Van Halen and AC/DC and Kiss and Black Sabbath. That's where it always ends up for me. Like, I don't care as much for no, don't get me wrong. Some of the new stuff is good. But it's not necessarily new ideas that are good. It's just new takes on old ideas that I guess I appreciate more than anything else. And I kind of wish that I wasn't, you know, shaking my fist at the clouds and off my lawn, but that's just how it is. You know, until, you know, somebody comes along and has the same kind of impact on me that Voivod has. You know, it's going to be a long time before I think something like that ever happens again.
Yeah.
And I don't hope it never happens. I just don't have a lot of faith that it ever will.
Yeah, I think I'm similar, where, you know, I'll check out new stuff, and a lot of times I kind of do the same thing. I'll start listening to it, I'm like, well, this is pretty good, but it reminds me of, you know, Carcass. So then I like go to my Carcass albums.
Right. They are really great.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, I kind of do that kind of thing where it's like, oh, this is cool. This is a good band. They're interesting. Because, you know, my kids are in their 20s, and so they listen to newer music and they'll play stuff for me. I'm like, yeah, that's all right. That's not bad. But it kind of like that guitar lead reminds me of so-and-so. So I'm going to go listen to that.
Right. I rarely hear anything new these days that makes me like stand up and pay attention and be like, wow, this is awesome. I gotta hear more of this. I can't think of a single thing that fits that category for me right now. Nothing. And I'm not trying to be that old bastard, but that's exactly where it is right now.
Yeah. Well, and I find that kind of what I'm finding interesting right now is a lot of, older bands that I've listened to for a long time, and the new material that they're putting out, and they're doing new interesting things that are kind of beyond what they did before. I find that pretty fascinating, because like, oh, it's still, this band that I love, but they're doing this interesting new take on their sound, or they're trying some new things, and or kind of amping it up a little.
You'll have a hard time getting me to shut up about Voivod, but the new Voivod is amazing, and that's a band that's been around for damn near 40 years, and they just keep reinventing themselves.
Yeah,
and they've taken a lot of weird directions in their path along the way, but goddamn, that band, I love them. I am a Voivod fanatic. Have been for a long time. I didn't like them the first time I heard them, which I thought was kind of weird. Back on it now, I did not like Voivod. I didn't get it, and I have friends that don't get it, and I understand if you don't get Voivod the first time you hear them. I get it. I don't agree with you, but but I get it. And if you keep listening, I promise you're going to find something eventually that's going to hook you. And when it does, you can't look back.
Yeah, super innovative. I think I was similar. I think the very first time I had ever, because I have a friend who's a big Voivod fan, and the very first time, he introduced me to them way back in the day, and the first time I heard them, I'm like, what? I don't get this. I don't get it. And then I listened to it again and went, okay, this is interesting. And then same. I think at the same time, I kind of just fell in love with the music and like, wow, this band's really interesting. And then the more I heard, like, wow, they're doing incredible things and they don't sound like anybody else. And that's the thing. I think that's, even though, as you mentioned, they've taken all these different turns with their music, but as soon as you put the needle down on a Voivod album, exactly. It's like, oh, that's Voivod. Just because they're fascinating. Really fascinating band. I wish there were more bands like that willing to take those kind of chances.
Right. Then maybe there would be some hope for all these new bands. I don't know. I don't know if I mentioned or not, but Ringworm is actually doing a couple dates with Voivod on their tour.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
We're playing with them up in Cleveland on June 15, and then a couple days later in Brooklyn.
Wow.
Only 2 dates on that tour, but I'm stoked as hell for them, because Ringworm has done a tour with Voivod before, but I wasn't in the band at that time. My brother-in-law and I got to go to the Cleveland date, hang out with them and stuff. And Voivod was my brother-in-law's favorite band also. And he got to, we got to hang out with everybody backstage and stuff. And that was like a fucking dream for Tom, my brother-in-law. Yeah. And he was so happy that, this band that we've all been listening to since high school, he used to hang out with them and drink beers and, just shoot the shit with these guys. And that really made his day,
Oh, I bet.
And so I was stoked too. I love Voivod. I've never actually been in a band that's played a show with them, or maybe I have. I don't really remember. So I think maybe I did one of my old bands a long, long time ago when Voivod was a 3-piece. I think for sure. I think we opened, but I don't remember. I know I was there.
That's cool that you're playing with them this year. I mean, that's great. So the tour with the Ringworm tour, is that kind of where are you guys going? Is you mentioned a couple shows, but are you hitting?
We're just doing those two. It's a weekend thing. We're just doing those two. We're just doing those two Voivod shows in June, and then we've got an appearance at the This Is Hardcore Fest in Philly in July, and then we've got some other stuff later in the year it's all still in the works right now. Nothing's 100% finalized, but we'll announce everything when it's all pen to paper.
Gotcha. Cool. Because I've never seen Ringworm. I would love to see you guys come to Salt Lake or Denver, or somewhere I can get to easily.
We definitely played Salt Lake because that, I was telling you earlier, I've had some weird experiences with beer out in Salt Lake. Just trying to figure it all out. Like, how do we get beer that isn't, near beer or whatever you call it?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think anybody that comes to Salt Lake has a weird experience, not just alcohol, just in general. We're a culturally stifled state. So.
We were actually in Salt Lake when I rejoined the band in 2019. We did a few dates with Havoc, and I think one of the dates was in Salt Lake, and it's I just remember like you said, the cultural differences, they're incredible.
Yeah.
Going into McDonald's is a completely different experience than going into McDonald's in Cleveland. It's fun. But yeah, definitely different.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I wanted to ask you, I always kind of finish up my interviews with my beer question, my beer, and so
more beer.
Yeah, more beer. So as I think my page Brews and Tunes, I pair craft beer with metal and hard rock. So I know you haven't really had any time to think about this. I might be putting you on the spot, but
bring it.
It's a Friday night.
And there's a lot more I think about than beer and hard rock coming. Right. So I think I should be okay at this.
All right, awesome. So
I might need some help for this, so hang on a second.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm gonna get my bird.
Let's get Flip involved here.
Yeah, Flip, who is also a featured member of the Cheap Beer Patrol.
Oh, excellent.
He's been on a few of the Cheap Beer Patrol videos, so he might be able to. That's Flip.
Awesome. Love it.
He's sometimes, but
pardon?
He's sometimes a little camera shy. That's why he's going back behind my head. But
oh, okay, that's cool.
He'll want. He figures out what's going on.
So it's a Friday night. Any Friday night. So the Larewolf hanging out at home, cracking open a beer. What are you drinking? What are you listening to? What are you spinning?
Hams and Van Halen. Almost.
Right on.
There's on a typical Friday night. That's usually what you're gonna find. Me drinking a Hams and me playing Van Halen on the stereo. If it's not Van Halen, it's going to be AC/DC or Motorhead. Those are when I just want to kick back and just unwind from the week. There's a lot of comfort to be found in an ice cold can of Hams and any song from Power Ridge.
Oh yeah,
or Let There Be Rock. I mean, those two albums are you can't get much better than that. In my opinion.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I'm trying to remember. I think Let There Be Rock that may have been the first AC/DC album I ever bought. I think I can't remember. It's hard to remember.
What a hell of a start.
Yeah, I can't remember though.
I know for sure mine was Dirty Deeds.
Oh, okay, cool.
But all the Bond albums are essential.
Yeah,
they're essential. You can't go wrong with any of them. You can put them in any order you want. They're all essential. Got to have them all.
Yeah, I wish I had seen him live. I was too young, but yeah, a friend of mine who's older, he saw Bon Scott era AC/DC at he saw them in New York at Madison, or where did he see them? I don't know. He saw them at some point, but yeah, it was late 70s. Might have been Highway to Hell tour. I'm not sure. Maybe before that, but I know he saw them. Like, oh man, that would be amazing.
He was pretty fortunate. I was too young, for any of that kind of stuff. I was 7 in 1980. So I wasn't going to any AC/DC concerts at age 7. Now my dad almost, I don't remember, I'll have to ask him next time I talk to him, but we had plans to go see Kiss on the Creatures of the Night tour when we were still living in Michigan.
Oh, wow.
But I remember they were running ads on TV for it. And I was begging my dad, I want to go to this concert. I want to go. Take me to this concert. I didn't even know what a concert was back then. I just knew that I was going to see Kiss and Fire and light, That's all I knew. And it didn't happen. I don't remember why, but I'll have to ask him about that next time. But yeah, that would have been great. That would have changed everything. I probably never would have played metal. I probably just would have played rock.
Yeah. What was your first concert?
My first concert was Pink Floyd.
Oh, wow.
On the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour.
Cool.
That was maybe like 86, 87, something like that.
Yeah, about 87, I think.
Yeah, I was like 13 or 14. And my stepmom, who isn't a whole lot older than I am, I mean, she's 13 years older than I am. But when I was a kid, it didn't seem like she was a whole lot older than me. She and a couple of her friends, I think, took me. They were going to the concert anyway, and they asked me if I want to go. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, I want to go.
Yeah.
And it was in Cleveland, and we were living in Columbus, so it was a couple hours drive. I just sat in the back seat of the truck, and back seat of the it was a GMC Jimmy.
Oh yeah,
that's what she was driving, which was I think my dad's truck. And I don't remember a lot about the concert, but I remember it was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was really. That was my first.
That'd be killer.
And then on, it was just like local thrash metal shows all the time.
Cool.
I went to every single thrash metal show I could back then.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good start. Pink Floyd. I never saw Pink Floyd. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan. They didn't come here for that tour. I don't know if they've ever come here. Maybe. I have no idea. But if they did, it would have been in the 60s probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never seen them, and yeah, I don't think they.
That was the only.
Pardon?
That was the only time I ever saw Pink Floyd.
Oh wow, that was a great tour though. That would have been cool.
I wish I remembered more of
it. Yeah.
I didn't really know what I needed to pay attention to. I just remembered we didn't have great seats at all. We were it was at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. It's a huge stadium. We were way far away from the stage. It's really the only thing I could see was like the pig flying in and the wall falling down. And I watched some dude fall. He was leaning up against a handrail, and he fell maybe 10, 15 feet in this stairwell in the stadium. I don't die or anything, but I'm sure he didn't fare too well.
Yeah. Yikes.
Positive I caught my first contact buzz at that show.
Probably.
Yeah. It was cool. It's probably why I don't.
Yeah, that's probably that would make sense. Nice. Oh, that's cool. Wow, what a great way to.
Like I said, my dad rock, so he didn't go to that show. I'm sure he just had to work the next morning. But my stepmom was happy to take me, so she's responsible for taking me to my first concert.
Very cool. Yeah, my first concert was lame. We don't need to get into that, but my kids.
Was Huey Lewis?
What's up?
Was it Huey Lewis? That's my guess.
No, it's worse. And I was young. I was in third grade.
What was it?
It was Air Supply.
That's lame as fuck.
I know, right? It was my buddy. Yeah, like I said, I would have been 9? Are you like 9 in third grade? 9 or 10? And it was my buddy's, this kid named Blake. It was his birthday, and that's what he wanted to go to. So this would have been 1978, 79, somewhere around there. And his dad bought me a ticket, and then called my mom and said, "Hey, can we take your son to this concert with us?" And I remember, I just remember
to see some Air Supply. Are you down?
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll go. I didn't really know. I mean, I knew some of the songs, and I was just a kid. I'm like, yeah, I'll go to a concert. That sounds fun. And I remember there were women, shooting their bras up on the stage, throwing their underwear on stage. And I remember like pulling on my friend, my friend's dad's sleeve, and he was a doctor. I'm like, Dr. McMaster's like, why are those women throwing underwear on stage? He's like, never mind. You don't need to worry about that. Now I know why, but at the time, like, what is that? Why are they doing that? What a weird thing. But yeah, that was my first concert. My kids were lucky enough. So at the time, I guess my daughter would have been 9 and my son would have been 11. I took them to Iron Maiden.
Oh, hell yeah.
And Yeah, and they loved it, and they're Iron Maiden fans anyway. But I just remember my daughter was, yeah, she was 9, and I remember she was tired, and we were on the, it was outside, we were on the lawn, and we had a blanket down, and she was just like, "Can we go? I'm tired. Like we're not leaving. It's Iron Maiden." She's like, And then they started the Trooper, and it was like she was possessed. She just leapt up in one movement and just landed and just like, "You take my life and I'll take yours too." And she put her hands out like that. I'm like,
That is fantastic.
there we go. Yeah, proud moment. I got a little tear.
Yeah.
Like, it's my daughter. So.
My son, I have a son. He's 26 years old. The first concert I think I ever took him to was a Ringworm show. Cool. And we played a festival in Cleveland because I took him because Guar was playing. We played with Guar Corpse, and so he got to like stand at the side of the stage while we were playing, but then he got to watch Guar and Cannibal and all the other bands that played that day. But the cool thing was I took him backstage when there was catering. Took him back to catering so we could eat, and it was right after Cannibal had played, and the Cannibal Corpse guys were all sitting at the same table, and there was nobody else back there. And my son and I were just sitting at the table, and Alex Webster, the bass player, he like waved to my son, and my son waved back, and then I asked Troy, "Do you want to go talk to him?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he went over there and talked to him, and those guys were so cool to my son, to my little, like, I think he was maybe 8 years old at the time. Wow. They were so cool to him, like really accommodating, super nice to him. It was really cool to see those guys just be cool to a little kid. The only guy that wasn't, and I hate to do this, but it was just kind of fitting maybe, was Pat O'Brien, who I tried to talk to him for a second. He just wasn't he was having an off day, and he was like, "Nah, I played like shit. It was sounding terrible up there. It was awful." He just wasn't feeling personable at all. But the other 4 guys were just super accommodating, like shaking his hand, asking him his name and all that stuff. "Was that your dad?" And just that kind of stuff. So they didn't know who I was. I didn't talk to any of them except for Pat, who didn't want to talk to me at all. But that was a fun dad moment for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I've heard those guys are really nice. Like, I mean, it's, you hear about, Corpse Grinder.
Corpse Grinder is the nicest guy in the world. Those guys are great.
Yeah.
Everybody except Pat O'Brien. And, that it's kind of makes sense now that we know what we know about him, but
yeah.
And I think I'm amazed at his technical prowess on the guitar. That dude is a magician. So I don't have a bad thing to say about him other than he was just having a bad day that day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that happens. Like, I think I've been lucky, and everybody I've met has been pretty cool, really friendly, really nice. But I've heard stories, horror stories of,
everybody's stories. I love telling people that Glenn Benton is not nearly as awful as they think he is.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ringworm played a string of dates with Deicide years ago down in Texas. And I'm telling you, Glenn Benton was awesome. He was so nice to me and the guys in the band. But as soon as he'd get an audience of just a few more people, he kind of would like turn it on. It'd be a switch you could see. And he would just, I think he did that to keep people at a distance. But to me and the other Ringworm dudes, he was great. He was awesome.
Well, nice you kind of wonder if it's kind of, it's kind of like Alice Cooper. Like he's in a character, it's a character almost that he's playing. And it's like,
I think he did as a defense mechanism, just to keep people at a distance,
which I understand.
Keep them feeling comfortable and personable with him.
Yeah.
That's what that's could be wrong.
I was at a show. This was a long time ago, many years ago. And it was Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple. It was a solo show. It was in Vegas at the Palms, and Kevin DeBro of Quiet Riot was there in the audience. And I had heard that he was an asshole, but I grew up listening to Quiet Riot. So after the show, I went over and said hi, and he was so nice, so friendly, so down to earth.
That's great.
Yeah. Like put his arm around me. He's like, "Hey, how's it going, man?" We chatted for a while. He was really, really just a nice guy, really, really nice guy. Cool. That's great. Well, Mike, this has been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much.
This is great.
Yeah.
I did not finish my gigantic narwhal, but it's going to go down tonight.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate your time. This was a blast.
I loved it. Anytime, man.
And so for everybody watching, please read the description below. There'll be links to the Ringworm page as well as Perdition Sect. If you have not heard either of those bands, you are missing out. Definitely check them out. Download. You can get on iTunes. Go to, I think, Relapse Records. Lots of cool stuff out there that you can check out their music. So killer stuff. So again, thanks, Mike, so much. Have a great night.